The evening was quiet in the capital city. Streetlights glowed faintly along the wide roads and the air held a light chill. General Maria, a decorated officer who had served her country for more than 2 decades, was driving home after a long day of meetings at the Defense Department. She wore her uniform proudly, and the rows of ribbons on her chest told the story of years of service, courage, and discipline. Her black SUV moved smoothly along the road. She had been through so many missions and had faced countless dangers overseas, but she never thought her greatest test would come on a peaceful night in her own country. Maria was known by her soldiers as calm under pressure. She never raised her voice unnecessarily, never let fear rule her decisions, and always believed in staying professional no matter the situation. That discipline was about to be tested in a way she did not expect. The stoplight ahead turned red, and Maria slowed her car. She reached for the water bottle resting in the cup holder and took a sip. Her mind replayed the meeting she had just attended. The discussion had been about new security measures for the coming months. It had been intense and draining, but she felt proud of the outcome. She looked forward to reaching home, greeting her daughter, and resting before another long day. But her peaceful drive was interrupted by flashing red and blue lights behind her. Maria glanced at the rearview mirror. 2 police cars were tailing her. Their sirens were off, but their lights demanded she pull over. She signaled calmly and pulled her SUV to the side of the road. At first, she thought it was just a routine check, maybe a mistaken plate reading, nothing serious. Yet something about the way the police cars moved unsettled her. They stopped sharply, boxing her vehicle from behind. Another car appeared from the opposite lane and parked diagonally, cutting off her path forward. Within seconds, she was trapped. Her heartbeat slowed, not from panic but from focus. Years of military training kicked in. She had been in ambushes before, but this was different. She was not on a battlefield. This was her city, her home, and these were officers sworn to protect. The driver's side mirror showed movement. 4 police officers jumped out of their cars with weapons drawn. They spread out quickly, their flashlights beaming into her windows. Their voices were loud, commanding her to raise her hands. "Driver, hands up. Now," one of them shouted. Maria did not move too quickly. She knew sudden actions could be misunderstood. Slowly, she rolled the window halfway down and kept her hands visible on the steering wheel. Her voice was steady and respectful. "Officers, I am General Maria. I am in full uniform. Please lower your weapons and explain the situation." But her words seemed to vanish into the night air. The officers did not lower their guns. Instead, they shouted louder, ordering her to exit the vehicle immediately. One officer banged his flashlight against her window, the noise sharp and aggressive. Maria kept her calm. "I will cooperate," she said clearly. "But please, there is no need for force." Her medals gleamed under the flashlight, but the officers seemed not to notice or not to care. The tension grew thicker by the second. One officer stepped closer, gripping his baton. Without warning, he struck the rear window. Glass shattered across the pavement. The sharp crack echoed down the empty street. Pieces of glass sparkled under the streetlight as they fell to the ground. Maria did not flinch. She had faced explosions far louder. She had been in convoys where windows shattered from enemy fire. But it hurt her deeply that here, in her own city, in uniform, she was treated like a threat. Her voice remained calm, though inside she felt a storm. "You are making a mistake," she repeated firmly. The officers hesitated but kept their guns pointed. The situation was seconds away from spinning out of control. Then, in the distance, the deep rumble of engines filled the street. Black SUVs approached, moving quickly but smoothly. Their headlights cut through the darkness as they turned the corner with precision. The police officers turned their heads, momentarily distracted. Maria recognized those vehicles instantly. She had seen them many times during high-level meetings. They belonged to the Secret Service. The SUVs came to a stop in a perfect line. Doors swung open at once. 6 men in suits stepped out in perfect coordination, their movements sharp and disciplined. Their earpieces glinted under the glow of the streetlights. The police officers froze, uncertain. Maria finally allowed herself a slow breath. She did not smile. She did not relax fully, but she knew the balance of power had shifted. The 6 agents spread out, their presence commanding and unmistakable. They did not shout. They did not rush. Their calm confidence filled the street in a way that silenced all noise. One of them stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Step away from the vehicle." The night had changed in an instant. The street was silent for a moment. Broken glass from the shattered window lay scattered across the pavement, shining faintly under the streetlight. General Maria kept her hand steady on the steering wheel, her eyes calm but watchful. She had been in many tense standoffs overseas, but this one was different. Here she sat in her home city, treated as if she were an enemy. The police officers froze when the black SUVs arrived. 6 men in dark suits had stepped out with slow, controlled movements. They did not raise weapons, yet their presence spoke of authority and training. They spread out with precision, forming a line that blocked the officers from advancing further. Maria recognized the cut of their suits, the way they stood, and the sharp wires of their earpieces. Secret Service. She had seen these agents guarding high officials many times in Washington. Their arrival was not chance. It was response. The lead agent, tall with steady eyes, spoke with a voice that carried command without shouting. "Step away from the vehicle." The police officers shifted uneasily. Their flashlights trembled slightly against the night. One officer, the one who had broken the window, gripped his baton tighter as if unwilling to back down. Another officer looked from Maria to the agents, unsure of what to do. Maria did not move. Her years of discipline taught her the power of stillness. She allowed the situation to unfold, knowing that panic would only raise the risk. The lead agent stepped closer. "This vehicle and its driver are under federal protection. You are out of line." The word struck the officers hard. Their guns, which only moments ago were aimed with confidence, now wavered. The authority of the Secret Service was not something they could brush aside. Maria finally spoke, her voice calm and steady. "Officers, I told you before, you are making a mistake. I am General Maria, United States Army." She did not raise her tone, but her words carried weight. The ribbons on her chest, the stars on her shoulders, the uniform she wore, they were undeniable. For the first time, one of the officers lowered his gun slightly. He looked uncertain, his voice cracking as he muttered, We received a call. Suspicious vehicle. Possible threat." The lead agent's eyes hardened. "And you responded with drawn weapons against a decorated general in full uniform?" The silence that followed was heavier than the sound of glass breaking. Maria remained still. Her heart was strong, her breathing controlled. Inside, however, she thought of her daughter at home, waiting for her mother to walk through the door safely. She could not allow fear to break her now. The agents moved with quiet coordination. 2 of them positioned themselves beside Maria's vehicle, forming a protective wall. Another agent spoke into a small microphone hidden on his collar. The remaining 3 stood in calculated positions, watching every movement of the police officers. "Lower your weapons," the lead agent ordered again, firmer this time. One officer obeyed, then another. But the one who had broken the window still held his baton tightly, his pride unwilling to bend. He glared at Maria through the half-open window, his jaw clenched. Maria met his stare without anger, only discipline. She had learned long ago that calmness was a weapon stronger than rage. At last, under the weight of silence and the unblinking eyes of the agents, the final officer lowered his baton. The street seemed to breathe again, but the moment was not over. The lead agent spoke once more, his words clear and sharp. "You will account for this action. Records are being made as we speak." Maria finally lowered her hands from the wheel, moving slowly so there would be no misunderstanding. She unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the door. The agents immediately closed ranks, creating a path for her. She stepped out, her uniform catching the glow of the lights, and stood tall. She had faced war zones, but tonight she carried herself with the same posture of command she had always shown in front of her troops. "General, are you safe?" one of the agents asked. "I am unharmed," Maria replied. "But this situation should never have happened." Her voice was firm, not emotional. She wanted clarity, not sympathy. The agents nodded. They knew her reputation. Maria was not only a high-ranking officer, but also someone who had served with distinction overseas, earning respect from generals, soldiers, and allies alike. Her presence demanded seriousness. The police officers now stood awkwardly, their weapons holstered but their faces uneasy. The authority of the moment had shifted entirely. Maria turned to them, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "You saw my uniform. You ignored my words, and you broke into my vehicle. Tell me, what threat did you believe I posed? The officers had no answer. Their silence was louder than any excuse. The lead agent stepped forward again, his tone like stone. This ends here. Further review will be conducted and higher offices will know exactly what occurred. Maria inhaled deeply. She was tired, not from fear but from the weight of injustice. She had fought for her nation abroad, yet here at home she was treated as if she were not worthy of respect. But she did not let bitterness control her. Instead, she thought of her daughter again, of the example she needed to set. Calm, strength, discipline. One of the agents guided her toward the SUV that had arrived. "General, we will escort you home." Maria paused, looking once more at the police officers who had cornered her. Her words were measured and deliberate. "You must learn what it means to serve and protect. Tonight you failed in that duty." Then she turned, entered the waiting SUV, and allowed the agents to close the door behind her. The convoy of black vehicles moved away smoothly, leaving the officers standing in the broken silence of their own actions. Inside the SUV, Maria finally allowed herself to exhale. The night had been long, but she knew this was only the beginning. Questions would rise, reports would be written, and truth would come to light. Yet what mattered most to her at that moment was reaching home safely, hugging her daughter, and knowing that she had once again kept her calm in the face of danger. She gazed out of the window at the passing lights of the city. The memory of shattered glass was still fresh, but so was the sight of the Secret Service standing firm by her side. Maria's thoughts were clear. Battles come in many forms, and tonight, she had faced one of them. The city rolled by in silence as the agents kept watch, and somewhere deep inside, Maria prepared herself for what part 2 of this story in her life would bring: the investigation, the questions, and the need to remind others of the true meaning of service. The convoy of black SUVs moved smoothly through the city streets. Inside one of the vehicles, General Maria sat quietly, her uniform still neat despite the glass fragments that had touched her shoulder earlier. Her hands rested calmly in her lap, but her mind was alive with thoughts. The 6 Secret Service agents rode in silence. 2 sat in the front seats, focused on the road, while 3 others were spread across the back, their eyes scanning the streets outside. One agent sat closest to Maria, ready to respond if she needed anything. Maria did not ask for comfort. She had lived through nights far darker than this one, nights when the sound of helicopters roared above, when radio calls reported enemy movements, when every second meant survival. Yet tonight carried a different kind of weight. It was not the battlefield, yet it felt like a battlefield of trust. She thought of the officers who had pointed their weapons at her. The memory of glass breaking still rang in her ears. She thought of their faces, their loud voices, and the way they ignored her calm words. She wondered what had driven them to act that way. Was it poor training? Was it pride? Or was it simply the danger of fear when people react before thinking? Her thoughts drifted to her daughter, waiting at home. Maria had promised her that she would always return no matter where she went. Tonight that promise had nearly been tested, not in a war zone but in the very city her daughter lived in. The agent beside her finally spoke in a quiet voice. "General, you handled it well." Maria turned her head slightly. "Handled it well?" "I sat in my car while 4 weapons pointed at me, while a window shattered beside my ear. I stayed calm, yes, but it should never have happened." The agent nodded, his expression serious. "You are right. That is why a full report will be made. Tonight's actions will not be ignored." Maria appreciated the assurance, but she knew words were not enough. She had served long enough to understand that mistakes could be buried if people were not careful, but this time she intended to make sure the truth came forward. The SUV entered a quiet neighborhood. The convoy moved in careful formation, watching for any unusual movement. Soon Maria's home appeared, a modest 2-story house with a small yard and a front porch. Warm lights glowed from the windows. Her daughter Lila was sitting inside, likely waiting for her mother to arrive. The SUV stopped in front of the house. 2 agents stepped out quickly, scanning the area. One agent walked up to the porch while another remained by the car. Maria opened the door and stepped out. The air was cool and she inhaled deeply, steadying herself. She walked toward the porch with the same measured steps she used when entering a military briefing room. The front door opened, and Lila appeared. She was in her early 20s, studying at the local university, but tonight her eyes were wide with worry. "Mom," Lila rushed forward, wrapping her arms around Maria. Maria returned the embrace, holding her daughter tightly. For a moment, the world outside faded. She was not a general. She was not a target of suspicion. She was simply a mother who had come home safely. "I'm fine," Maria whispered, though her voice carried weight. Lila pulled back slightly, her eyes scanning the broken glass still clinging to her mother's sleeve. "What happened?" Maria looked at her daughter and then at the agent standing nearby. She chose her words carefully. "There was a mistake. But I am home now. That is what matters." Lila wanted to ask more, but she respected the strength in her mother's tone. The lead agent stepped forward. "General, with your permission, we will station 2 agents here tonight." "Just as a precaution," Maria nodded. She did not like bringing security into her quiet neighborhood, but she knew it was necessary. The night's events were too serious to take lightly. After the agents settled outside, Maria and Lila went inside the house. The living room was warm, filled with the soft scent of the candle Lila had lit earlier. The table still had a plate of food waiting. Maria removed her jacket carefully and placed it on the chair. Her metals clinked faintly as they touched the wood. She sat down and Lila sat across from her, waiting silently. Maria finally spoke, her voice low but steady. "Something happened tonight that should not have happened. Police stopped me on my way home. They drew weapons, broke my window, and they ignored everything I said." Lila gasped softly. "But you were in uniform. Didn't they see?" "They saw," Maria answered. "But sometimes people do not want to see what is in front of them. They only see what they fear." Lila lowered her eyes, struggling to process it. "I'm glad the agents came," Maria nodded. "So am I. But it makes me think, what if they had not arrived in time?" Silence hung between them for a moment. Maria straightened her posture, the weight of command returning. "This is not just about me. This is about how we treat those who serve, about how we treat anyone who deserves respect. This cannot be forgotten." The hours of the night stretched on. Maria spoke little more about the event, but she sat with her daughter until she finally went upstairs to rest. Later, alone in the quiet living room, Maria replayed everything in her mind. She thought of the officers' faces, the way their flashlights shook when the agents arrived, the silence when they realized their mistake. She knew tomorrow would bring questions. The Defense Department would call. The Secret Service would file reports, and the police department would scramble to explain. But Maria was not focused on revenge or punishment. She was focused on truth. She believed that truth was the strongest weapon, stronger than pride, stronger than fear. The night passed slowly. From the window she could see the 2 agents stationed outside, their figures steady under the streetlight. Their quiet presence reminded her she was not alone in this. At last she stood, walked to her desk and took out her journal. Writing had always been her way of clearing her thoughts after missions. Tonight was no different. She wrote about the flashing lights, the raised voices, the broken glass, and the calm she forced herself to keep. She wrote about the Secret Service arrival, the way their silence carried more strength than shouting ever could. And she ended her entry with one line: "Calmness is not weakness. It is control." As she closed her journal, Maria felt ready. Tomorrow would not be easy, but she had faced many tomorrows before, and she would face this one too, with the same strength, calm, and discipline that had carried her through every battle. The long night was ending. Dawn would soon arrive, and with it the next chapter of truth. The next morning came quietly. Sunlight spread across General Maria's neighborhood, painting the streets gold. Birds sang outside her window, but Maria woke before the sound reached her ears. She was used to early mornings, to rising before the day began, yet this morning was different. Sleep had come lightly, broken by memories of flashing lights and shouts. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her uniform folded neatly on the chair. The jacket still bore a faint scratch from the broken glass. She reached out, brushing her hand across the fabric. For her, the uniform was more than clothing. It was trust, it was duty, it was respect. Last night, that trust had been challenged in the place it should have been most secure, her own city. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Lila was still asleep, and the 2 Secret Service agents remained outside, keeping watch. Maria brewed coffee and stood by the window, thinking. She knew the day ahead would not be peaceful. Calls would come. Reports would begin, and questions would demand answers. Just as she finished her first sip, her phone rang. The number belonged to the Pentagon, she answered in her steady tone. General Maria speaking. General, this is Colonel Davis, came the firm voice on the other end. We were informed of an incident last night. The Secretary has requested your presence this morning. Transportation will arrive within the hour, Maria responded simply. Understood. After hanging up, she prepared herself. She placed her uniform jacket back on, the metals shining once more. She looked in the mirror and reminded herself. She would face this day with the same strength she had shown the night before. Within the hour, a black SUV arrived. 2 Secret Service agents escorted her into the vehicle. Lila hugged her mother tightly before she left, whispering, "Be strong." Maria replied with a calm smile. Strength is all I know. The Pentagon stood tall and solid as always. Its walls had seen decades of decisions, triumphs, and conflicts. Inside, corridors buzzed with movement. Maria walked through them, her steps even, her shoulders squared. Every salute given to her she returned with precision. In a private conference room, senior officials were already waiting. Colonel Davis greeted her respectfully, followed by a representative from the Department of Justice, 2 Pentagon officials, and the lead Secret Service agent from last night. The Secretary of Defense joined a moment later, carrying a serious expression. General Maria, he began, please take a seat. We need to go through what happened last night in detail. Maria sat, folding her hands on the table. She spoke clearly, recounting every moment, from the flashing lights to the shouts to the glass shattering to the precise arrival of the agents. She gave no anger in her words, only facts. Her tone was disciplined, her memory exact. When she finished, silence filled the room. The Justice Department representative leaned forward. We already reviewed some of the traffic camera footage. It confirms what you said. The police approached with weapons drawn, even though your uniform was clearly visible. The Secretary of Defense's voice was firm. This is unacceptable. A decorated general, threatened in the heart of our city. We must know why this happened. The lead Secret Service agent spoke next. Our unit received alerts the moment the officers boxed her in. Federal channels detected unusual activity and we deployed. If we had been a minute later... He let the thought trail off. Maria remained calm. I appreciate the agent's response, but I want to make something clear. This is not about me alone. This is about what it means to protect those who serve, and to protect citizens who deserve safety. If this can happen to me, what about others without rank or uniform? The room grew heavier with her words. Colonel Davis nodded slowly. There will be an investigation. The department will question the officers, review their training, and examine their decisions. Maria replied firmly, Good, but this must be done with truth, not excuses. I don't want another person to sit in their car at night with glass breaking beside them, unsure if they will make it home. The Justice Department representative agreed. We will ensure it. Transparency is the priority here. The Secretary of Defense leaned back, studying Maria. You held yourself with discipline, even when weapons were pointed at you. That calmness has become part of the record. Others will learn from your actions. Maria's eyes did not waver. Calmness is strength. Anger would have brought chaos. My duty is to lead by example, even in the darkest moment. After the meeting, Maria stepped outside into the bright daylight. Cameras had already gathered. Reporters were waiting at the gates, voices calling out questions. General Maria, what happened last night? Were you in danger? Do you believe the officers targeted you unfairly? Maria paused at the steps, agents surrounding her. She could have walked past in silence, but she chose otherwise. She stood tall, faced the cameras, and spoke in her steady tone. Last night there was an incident. Police officers stopped me and the situation escalated in a way it should not have. But I want to make something clear. I remained calm and no harm was done to me. I thank the Secret Service agents who arrived swiftly. This is not about anger. This is about accountability. We must ensure that mistakes are corrected and that trust and protection remain strong. Her words were measured, not accusatory, but they carried power. The reporters scribbled quickly, their cameras flashing. Then Maria stepped into the waiting vehicle and left, her statement already spreading across news channels. That evening, Maria returned home. She sat on the porch with her daughter as the sun set. The 2 agents still stood nearby, watchful. Lila broke the silence. Everyone is talking about it, Mom. Your speech is on every channel. Maria nodded. It had to be said. People must understand that strength is not in shouting or breaking, but in staying calm and facing truth. Her daughter smiled faintly. That's why I've always looked up to you. Maria looked at the horizon, her expression thoughtful. This is not finished yet. Investigations take time, but I will not let it fade quietly. I will speak again if I must. The long day ended with quiet determination. Maria knew storms were coming, statements, debates, arguments. Yet she was ready. She had lived through greater storms. In her heart, she repeated the same promise she made to herself the night before. Calmness is not weakness. It is control, and control would carry her through what was to come. The city had returned to its usual rhythm, but for General Maria, the past week remained alive in her mind. Every glance at her uniform, every sound of passing sirens reminded her of that tense night when the police had drawn weapons on her. Yet she carried herself with the same calm discipline that had defined her entire career. She knew that true strength was measured not by anger but by patience and clarity. The investigation into the incident had progressed steadily. Reports had been collected from the officers involved, body camera footage had been reviewed, and statements were being compiled from witnesses and Secret Service agents. Maria had been present for each stage, answering questions, clarifying events, and correcting inaccuracies. Today, she was called to a final review at the Department of Justice headquarters. The atmosphere was quiet but tense. Maria entered the building with measured steps, her uniform pressed and medals gleaming. The doors closed behind her, and she entered a conference room where the officials had gathered. Colonel Davis and the lead Secret Service agent were already seated. Several senior officials from the police department also sat across the table, their expressions formal, some tense, some uneasy. The lead investigator began. General Maria, thank you for your cooperation during this investigation. We have reviewed all available evidence, including police reports, traffic cameras, and agent statements. Based on our findings, he paused, ensuring her attention was fully on him. Maria nodded slightly, encouraging him to continue. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp, ready to respond to any claim or excuse. The actions taken by the officers were not appropriate. The evidence shows that you were clearly in uniform, driving a recognized government vehicle, and posed no threat. The decision to draw weapons and break the vehicle window violated protocol and department policy. A murmured acknowledgement passed through the room. Some officers lowered their eyes. Others shifted in their seats. The investigator continued. Disciplinary measures will be taken against those involved. Additionally, training protocols will be reviewed and improved to prevent similar incidents in the future. Maria leaned forward slightly. I appreciate the accountability, she said. But I want to stress, this is not just about punishment. It is about ensuring that respect, recognition, and calm judgment are part of every officer's training. Mistakes of this kind should not be repeated under any circumstances. Her words were measured but carried authority. Even the officers who had been involved felt the weight of her calm truth. Colonel Davis nodded. General Maria, your approach throughout this investigation has been exemplary. Calm, clear, and professional. Your actions not only protected yourself but set a standard for all who serve. Maria thanked him with a simple nod. She did not seek praise. Her focus was always on the mission, whether that mission took place on foreign soil or in her own city. The lead Secret Service agent added, We are grateful for your composure during the initial incident. It allowed us to respond effectively and prevent escalation. Maria's mind briefly returned to that night, the flashing lights, the shouts, the shattered glass. The memory no longer filled her with fear. Instead, it reminded her of the power of discipline and the importance of presence of mind. Once the meeting concluded, Maria stepped outside into the sunlight. The city bustled around her, yet she moved calmly, as if her presence commanded the rhythm of the day. Outside, reporters waited, cameras poised to capture her next words. Maria faced them, agents flanking her, and spoke with her usual clarity. The investigation has concluded. Actions were taken to ensure accountability and to strengthen training protocols. I am satisfied with the steps being taken, but more importantly, I hope this serves as a reminder that calm, respect, and discipline are essential in every action we take, whether in uniform or in daily life. Mistakes happen, but they must be corrected with truth and fairness. The reporters scribbled furiously, capturing every word. Some asked follow-up questions, but Maria remained composed, answering them with clarity and without anger. After the press conference, Maria returned home. Lila was waiting, and this time there was no tension, no fear, only relief and quiet pride. "Mom, it's over, isn't it?" Lila asked softly. Maria smiled, kneeling slightly to meet her daughter's eyes. "It is over in terms of accountability, but lessons remain. That is why we act with discipline and respect every day." Her daughter nodded, understanding more than words could say. That evening, Maria sat on the porch, writing in her journal once again. She reflected on the week, the incident, the agent's swift response, the investigation, and the resolution. She wrote about the officer's mistakes, but she also wrote about her own calm approach, the lessons learned, and the importance of truth. Her final words for the day read, "Strength is calm. Authority is earned through patience and discipline. True service is shown in how we face challenges, not in how we react to fear." As night fell, the neighborhood returned to quiet. The agents had departed, confident that Maria and her home were safe. But she remained vigilant, aware that her role as a general and as a citizen required constant awareness. Days later, the police department announced publicly that the officers involved had been disciplined and would undergo additional training. The city recognized the importance of accountability, and Maria's measured response became a model for leadership and professionalism. Maria returned to her routine. She visited the base, met with her troops, and continued her duties with the same excellence she had always shown. Yet every step reminded her of that night, the lesson of calm under pressure and the power of disciplined action. Her colleagues admired her even more. The media highlighted her story as one of courage, not because of anger or revenge, but because of calm intelligence and strength in the face of unjust treatment. Through it all, Maria never lost sight of what mattered most: her family, her honor, and her commitment to truth. She taught those around her, silently and through example, that discipline and respect are the foundation of leadership. Weeks later, Maria sat in a training session with young officers. She shared her experiences not as a story of fear, but as a story of learning. She spoke about maintaining composure, about reading situations carefully, and about understanding the responsibilities that come with authority. Leadership, she said to the room, is not about proving power. It is about guiding others, protecting those who serve, and acting with integrity. Mistakes will happen, but how you respond defines your character. The young officers listened intently, inspired by her calm confidence. Maria's words were simple, yet they carried decades of experience, courage, and wisdom. At home that night, she joined Lila on the porch. They watched the stars together, the soft glow of lights reflecting the peace of their neighborhood. Maria held her daughter's hand and smiled, knowing that tonight, for the first time in days, the world felt safe and just. "Mom," Lila said, breaking the silence, "you handled everything so well. I want to be like you one day." Maria squeezed her hand gently. "You already are. Strength is not about being fearless. It is about facing fear and staying calm. That is what you will learn from every challenge." And as the stars twinkled above, Maria reflected on her journey. She had faced danger, misunderstanding, and injustice, yet she had responded with dignity, intelligence, and calm resolve. The city had witnessed accountability, the young officers had witnessed leadership, and her daughter had witnessed courage in action. It was more than a victory for herself. It was a victory for truth, for discipline, and for the principle that respect and calm authority always prevail. General Maria knew that the lessons of that night would remain with her forever. She would continue to serve, to teach, and to lead, showing the world that courage is not loud or violent, but steady, patient, and unwavering. The long chapter had closed, but her example would continue to inspire those who saw leadership not as power, but as responsibility. And in the quiet of her home, Maria finally allowed herself to rest, knowing that justice had been served, calm had triumphed, and the right path had been followed.